Hi, this is Dr. Sani. Today's presentation is um, technology for your expertise. So I wanted to talk a little bit about um, technology and how you can use it to enhance um, your expertise, mainly how it gives you a platform to share your expertise. So we're going to cover a few things. Um, Today, and the idea is to be helpful. It's meant for you to take a few things away. You can walk away with 2 or 3 ideas from this presentation. That's the goal for this presentation. So let's give you a little background. So if you think about, excuse me, where technology has come, there's been the generation of folks who've grown up with video games like Atari, Nintendo, Sega, PlayStation, and then the computers in the early days from the 1980s, before when they started coming into the households, such as like the Apple IIc, the DOS-based systems, IBM computers. This is an example of a DOS-based IBM computer. These were large boxes that were hard to carry from place to place with big heavy monitors. Now we have laptops with Wi-Fi, and even 10 years ago that was kind of a new thing. And then we went to iPhones and iPads and little tablet PCs um, to Chromebooks. So question to think about is how many devices do you have and how many electronic things do you actually have to manage today? So if you think a little bit about software, um, you've got different types of software, such as of how software has actually evolved, such as Microsoft Windows, the internet. You went from AOL dial-up modem, Netscape, Windows, Explorer, pop-up mail, Gmail, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Chrome. Now everything is integrated. So the idea behind this talk is to be practical and not scientific. Um, so let's kind of dive in here a little bit further. Now, in this age that we are in, there are 2 issues that come up often that I've seen from my conversations. One is information overload, meaning we've got so much information coming to us from so many different avenues, and it's hard to keep keep what's important in front of us. And then on the other side of that is, as our lives become more complicated, and especially as we get older, it can get harder to remember things. So an acronym by a colleague here is CRAFT, can't remember a freaking thing. Um, so, but let's take that from another perspective. Most people have an expertise in their field of whatever they've been doing. There's many of studies on expertise. So when we think about what we're really good at and what we know really well, right, we actually are in this wonderful space where we can actually share our expertise, and when others find us because of our expertise, we want to make it easier for them to find us. So, I mean, there's many reasons for um, us to be able to share our expertise, and one of the ideas there is that using technology will actually aid us and make it easier for us than more complicated and some of the issues that we feel. So some ideas behind why you may want to share your expertise is maybe for commercial reasons. It may be from an altruistic standpoint. It also may be from a legacy standpoint, depending on where you are in your career. So I think of expertise somewhat like an arrow, meaning that with your expertise, we each may call ourselves something similar in the field. We may be an architect, we may be a gardener, we may be a teacher, but our expertise may be something very specific within those fields, and it's a reason people come and seek us. So the arrows may look the same, but it's a point that is different. So let's go into what the real crux of this presentation is about. It is you can build your own platform today to share your expertise effectively and efficiently. And I mean that when I use the word platform, I mean technology. So it does not have to be confusing, time-consuming, or frustrating. If you do not need to spend hours on figuring out the latest, craziest new fad or software or hardware, but you do, and you do not need to spend a lot of money. So the idea behind this is how do you differentiate yourself, and then how do you magnify your expertise? And that's what I want to get into, more so the magnification, because you already have a core expertise. What tools do you use that will help you be more effective and more efficient? So let's do this. We're going to jump right into some of the ideas. We're going to start with John Wooden, who was a famous basketball coach at UCLA. And we're going to start off very basic. We'll get much more advanced, but we'll get much more advanced. But John Wooden, there's a famous story about John Wooden, who was this wonderful basketball coach, and he would get these amazing players at a collegiate level, and he would always start the first day of practice every season, first day of practice with his whole team, by actually having them come to center court and having each of his players take off their shoes, and then he would methodically teach them how to put on their shoes, how to tie their shoes, so that way that when he knew his team would get into the finals, maybe at the championship level, that they wouldn't have a star player saying he can't play because of blisters. So his whole point was, let's work on the basics at the very beginning. Let's make sure we understand that, and then let's build from there. So that's the idea behind this presentation, is start off very basic, and then we'll get into some of the more advanced things as we go further. Another idea here too is a comedian who was actually quite famous a while ago. Carrot Top used to have different types of, his comedic style was very different in the way that he would present his ideas, and he would tell jokes. Is he would have a box of things behind him, and what he would do is he would bring out a prop, tell a joke, and if it was funny, great. If it wasn't, that's okay. And then he would move on to the next prop, and he kind of did this kind of rather quickly. So there will be a lot of different tools here that we can talk about. And the idea is to spread a lot of different ideas, so you can walk away with 2 or 3 items that will help you implement. So let's go a little bit further from there. So let's start first with the idea of hardware. And there's this difference between Mac and Microsoft. I'm going to take a step further there, but there's no right or wrong here. Everybody has their preference. So I want to take it a step further and talk a little bit about integration. The idea here is we're getting to a stage where there's so much competition in the market when it comes to hardware, and there's so much competition in the market when it comes to software, that it can get a little bit tricky to maneuver. So the idea would be, if you can try to integrate your hardware and your software to a certain degree, it makes it easier to manage. What's working for me is I'm using a Chromebook. I've migrated over to a Nexus, as well as an Kindle, or a Nexus-based product, Google Project Fi. Um, and that idea is, if I can stay within one realm, um, it'll be easier to manage all this different information. The other idea is, we've gone to these super small gadgets. And the interesting thing is the revival of the desktop. Um, the revival of the desktop, meaning nowadays it's extremely inexpensive to buy a desktop system with a very nice monitor for a low amount of money. And I would say to folks who are getting away from the desktop, is that it's still a good idea to have a desktop, because you can still do a ton of work and productivity off of a desktop that you may not have the ability on some of their smaller devices, or smaller devices aren't as powerful. So this is actually a really good time to purchase desktop or upgrade your desktop information. I know that's something makes a lot of sense for some folks. A service used quite often, Amazon Prime, which has changed a little bit of our lives, and now of how we do retail. And the reason being, Amazon has done so well, it's made it so easy for us to purchase things that would take typically more time. So for the folks who may not be using a service like Amazon, it is radically changing, how and what we're buying, and helping be more efficient with time and cost. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I've recently tested this project called Google Fi, which is Google's cell phone service, but it's integrated with Wi-Fi, and it's built so that way Google products actually work extremely well on it. So now Google can actually provide you cell phone service, Wi-Fi service within your phone, integrate to your laptop, as well as help you with all your software part of all your software of being integrated together. So the idea of hardware and software coming together has been around for a very long time. Apple actually started the trend with Steve Jobs in the 80s, but it's kind of coming now full circle, and I've got some examples of that. So the idea here is, let technology help you be more effective and more efficient with your work. It shouldn't be the other way around. It shouldn't slow you down. It shouldn't make it harder. And I want to talk about some more basic things, also to figure out how also be able to help you do that. So one of the things to start with is your emails. Emails seem to be kind of the center point of communication in today's world. Regardless of how fast technology is changing and what we're doing and how we're doing it, email is still something that's widely accepted, in many different organizations, cultures, groups. It is still something that we all currently work on, and it's a necessity of life in our professional lives. So, how many emails are in your inbox? A couple points here about this is being efficient with email. And it can be very difficult, and what's helped me the most is understanding that email can take over your lives, and it can be other people's agenda, and it's kind of a push, meaning people are pushing messages to you, than a pull, meaning that you're sending as many messages. So with emails, one of the best guidances that I've gotten is work on emails 3 times a day, meaning 30 minutes for 3 times a day, which is an hour and a half a day during the work day, during the work week. During the weekends, I usually try to keep that to one 30-minute session on the weekend. And what I like to do is I like to empty my inbox, meaning completely get rid of my emails within those 30 minutes. Now, I know that kind of seems hard and crazy at the beginning. It's difficult. And the way I typically do it is a half an hour in the morning, a half an hour in the afternoon, and a half an hour in the evening. If there are emails that need more attention or more knowledge, I have a way of dealing with that, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But at the same time, I'm consistently working on my emails at short bursts of time, and I'm not glued to my inbox so I can work on other things. It actually works out pretty well for me. I also have some tools that I use that keep me really efficient. I know for some people it's not possible, but for the system that I use currently is a Gmail-based system, and it actually has an inbox, has a way of segregating the inbox to, as you can see here, primary, social, and promotions, and even has an updates tab. But basically, if something comes in that's addressed directly to me, we'll go into my primary box. If something comes in from a social network like Google or Google Plus, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, it'll go into the social tab. Promotions are all the things that people are trying to either sell you or tell you about that typically isn't targeted to you. Updates could be things about software, and that I don't typically use this tab. I don't have it in my box. But what happens is it's really easy for me to focus on my primary box, make sure I do the communication that I need to do, 30 minutes a day or 30 minutes at a time, 3 times a day. Social, if I look at it, it's great. If there's something that pops up to me, I may look at it. The other part about social is most of the time on the social platforms, if someone sends you a message through a social platform, it typically ends up in your email. You see the part of the message at least in your social box. So you can get rid of that quickly, so that way you don't spend a whole lot of time. And then promotions, same thing. Quick glance just to see if there's anything there. If there isn't, I just delete most of them. And usually I'm staying at inbox 0 for most parts of the day. Some days a little bit busier than others, but it typically works. The other app that I really like, and this again is only her Gmail-based email system, is called Inbox. And it kind of takes this also, that whole segregation of emails, or that whole point of emails, to another level, which helps me actually manage that priority inbox. The primary inbox here, this inbox app actually helps me manage it in the sense of it can actually let me snooze emails. So there's something important that I do need to respond to, but not at that moment, right? But I know I need to come back to it maybe in my evening session of email. I can do later today. I can snooze the email to pop up again in my inbox later today. So I can still get to inbox 0, still have that mental clarity, and at 0. But I can also, it'll pop back up into my email if I want to look at it tomorrow or the next week. Inbox, this has really been really helpful for me to make sure I stay and focus on my priorities throughout the day, not get sucked into email. The other practice that I love about email, but I have to do consistently, maybe during the holidays or when I'm on vacation, is things that I may have signed up for at one point because I had an interest for, but don't have it now. Maybe some new author or service or software or something that may have caught my attention. Typically I will sign up for their email listserv without thinking, and I do that just because it's a way for them to send me messages so I can think about whatever I need to think about, or I can learn about whatever they're trying to teach me. But at the same time, I unsubscribe religiously, meaning there are strong laws in the US around spam and people sending emails that if you're not wanting those emails. The CAN Spam Act means that people shouldn't be sending you emails or can't send you emails if you didn't sign up for them. So you can also unsubscribe, meaning you can say, I don't want these emails. I do that often, especially to make sure that the promotions tab, or that I'm not getting over too many emails on a certain subject, I unsubscribe religiously. I think it's a good practice to have. So what do you do with those emails that you need to get to, that you are important, but you can't fit into the time, of just 30 minutes, per session, or an hour and a half in a day, because some emails take longer, a lot more work. So I use a service called Evernote. I love it. I use it across many devices. I use it not just for emails. I use it for basically like my second brain. And the reason I use it so much is in 2013, let's see here, Evernote, demo, and GTD. In 2013, I decided to become better about managing information. I picked up David Allen's book on getting things done, and I also decided to go as digital as much as I could. I had a very demanding parts of my career at the time, so I wanted to be as efficient as I possibly could. And when I started doing that, I thought, let me digitize as much as I could. And so with Evernote, there's a lot that I could have done and did, so I could be more efficient. I could have everything basically in one place. So a couple of things that I did was put everything in there, either as a text note, and back then it didn't have all the functionalities that it does. I would take pictures, and keep it in Evernote. The nice part of Evernote, you can actually take a picture of your handwriting and you can turn it into text. It was nice I could use it off of many different devices, so using an Android-based device, using an Apple-based device, it works. Evernote now has special notebooks that you can take notes in and take pictures of that actually make it easier to turn that into text if you have handwriting that's hard to read. I can combine notes, which is something that, so if I've got two different notes on the same topic or two different emails on the same topic for a project, I can turn that into one note, which ends up, when you use a bunch of notes, sticking them together, it turns it into, for me, one file. So so that's really important for the work that I do. The other part of that is I can now clip things as I'm reading them. So if I'm reading something in a Kindle book or online, I can actually, off my Nexus, I can actually just save it straight into Evernote. So that way I don't lose information, and it can get there really quickly. And the last other piece of this is I consistently am organizing, deleting, working off my Evernote, so that way so I can prioritize. That's the biggest part that Evernote helps me with, is not just remembering everything, because I don't remember a lot now. I try to keep everything out of my mind, but I try to be very consistent with what my priorities and goals are. And Evernote helps me do that because I'm always looking in there and I'm consistently making sure that I'm making sure that I'm organizing my Evernote so I can stay focused on my priorities and have the mental clarity that I need. Let's go a little bit further. I want to talk a little bit about calendars. I know there are plenty of calendar products out there. Google has one, which we'll talk a little bit about. Apple has one. Microsoft has one, the Outlook, which a lot of people use, and they all have their little idiosyncrasies. They're all advantageous in some ways. I personally love the Google Calendar. I found it to be extremely useful, and I started using that from my work in 2013, starting in 2013. The idea around the Google Calendar, it integrates really well into the Google devices. It's easy to share appointments. You can share different calendars, so you can set up different calendars like I've seen over here. You can use different colors. I use that often. I use a hold color for my calendar, so if I'm trying to book an appointment with somebody, I use a color with different colors, so I know that's that same color is a hold color. I like the apps. The other part of the Google Calendar is that you can also show up. You can have it send you an email at the beginning of the day of what you have on your calendar. So if you religiously check your email first, you can look to see, what you've got scheduled in the day if you don't remember. Or it can send you reminders. So I use this when I'm working with clients or colleagues. I set up an email reminder maybe 10 days beforehand, a week before, a day before, 20 minutes before, just so that way, people remember as well as I do. So I found this really integrative, and then the alerts, on the calendar are just fantastic. I want to go a little further into online storage. So I actually do use Google Drive for my file system. I like it a lot because I can use it as a rudimentary system to put together word processing, to do PowerPoint presentations. This presentation was done in Google's PowerPoint presentation format. I like it because it syncs to my desktop easily, and that it integrates with my Chromebook, with my Nexus, with everything. So everything's in one place now. Other services, Microsoft has some products. Dropbox and Box also have some collaborative products. Dropbox I've used recently on a project to collaborate on documents, so you can actually edit Microsoft Word and Excel files, and same thing with Box. And the nice part about Box, you can actually email into the Box, a Box file, so it's great for collaborating with others. Microsoft has also now put their services online. So there's Microsoft Online. It has Microsoft OneDrive, where you can, just like Dropbox and Box, you can upload your files there. So the idea here is, though, integration. Can you integrate it with your hardware so it's easy to get to and manage? And then obviously collaboration is really important. There's these things called SharePoint, which is a Microsoft product, and many large organizations are currently using it. So then there's this whole idea of communication programs that are being used that are not email, that are not documents, that are used to be able to communicate informally, quickly, and at the time, like the spur of the moment. So the HipChat is something you often used in some technology firms where, the technology person sitting at their desk, they're working on something, they've got email, but they're not looking at it. They got their phone, but they're not looking at it, and they're just working. And HipChat will be a messaging system where a colleague who may not want to interrupt them but has to ask a quick question will send them a quick HipChat, and it'll pop up, and the idea is the person will break as much of their focus, and they will send a message back real quick and real informally and kind of quickly and easily and move on. So it's kind of a way to get somebody's attention quickly, send them a message, and then kind of move on. Kind of like text, for mobile phones, or how text was originally thought of. The other idea is this thing, a company that's really growing very quickly. It's $1 million company, only a few years old, and called Slack. And they use internet relay channels, which are basically like email but not, meaning that there are channels where you can communicate back and forth, but the communication is saved. So it's really helpful for teams and kind of beats the problem of email about who CC'd and who's not, and who got the email and who didn't, and who was it forwarded to. It's just one place where you can go back to all the communication that the team had about whatever topic. If there's someone new or someone trying to catch speed or someone who wanted to go back to see what specific decisions were made, they can go into this channel or go into Slack, and all of the history is there that's searchable and easy to find. So it's working for people, for organizations, especially the ones that are on email fatigue. I want to take a second here to talk about security and passwords. The question here is, how often do you change passwords? Some people don't change them for decades. Some people change them much more religiously. I like to change passwords usually once a year at least. And the other thing I like to use is the idea called two-step identification. So that's for those really important accounts where you type in your password and then it'll take you one step further. It'll send if you're logging into something new, it'll send you a message that will tell you on your as a text message or an email, depending on what you want, about a special code of numbers that it generates, and then you can enter that code in to get into your email. So the second way to verify that you're the one actually the person who is requesting, or person who is actually wanting access to that information, and it's you and not somebody else, someone who may have stole your password. E-wallet is a software program recommended to be able to save passwords and to save information. So you remember only one password and you put all the information in your e-wallet. And that way, if you only have to remember one password, so you can get to all your other passwords. There's video conferencing obviously has grown immensely over the last couple of years. Has gotten much better, and it's still kind of in its early years of figuring out how to use properly. There are a number of platforms for video conferencing. I'm not going to get into too much of them. Some major ones are WebEx, which is a Cisco product, GoToMeeting, and Skype. They all have their functionalities and again their idiosyncrasies of what works well, what doesn't. Typically, it's just recently used a WebEx product. I really liked it. Kind of felt like we were all very close to all of us being in the same room. GoToMeeting has also got very similar properties, and Skype is great also because it's really cost efficient. So, there's video conferencing is really an important and interesting platform, and a way that's going to add to the way that we do our work. A service that I really like is Uber Conference Calls. So it's a free conference call system, basically, like a telebridge, a conference call bridge. The part that I really like about Uber Conference Call is you can use it off of any device. You can use it off of Wi-Fi. You can use it off your phone. You can dial in without pins, so you don't have to find a pin. And then it also, everyone can see, if even it's a conference call and you may not be able to see each other, everybody can see who's talking if you use their app or off the web-based service. Who is talking at the time, meaning which phone number or which name, depending on how you sign up, and like how many people are actually on the call. So sometimes there are people on the call that you don't realize are there, or how many participants are there, and it gives you a good visual. So it's a free service that I've found actually very useful in my work. The other thing I've used quite often is Doodle, which is a doodle poll, which is good for trying to get people to figure out a time that'll work. The idea of trying to schedule can get kind of hard, especially if there's many people who aren't using the same calendar system. So Doodle will allow people to say what times are free and available for a conversation, a call, or meeting. So Doodle's been actually very helpful. I want to take a step and go into self-learning, because from a technology standpoint, there are many great tools on how to share information, but there's also the flip side. There's a ton now of content, of rich expertise out there, and of ways, to share your knowledge base and to learn from others. So I wanted to share some of the learnings that I've learned for technology, as well as in the field of talent management, leadership development, consulting psychology, and business, that have helped me greatly. So we're in this wonderful stage of having unlimited access to learn whatever you want to learn in this arc of history. So I tend to like podcasts because I'm an audio learner, and it's a fastly growing field. It's basically like radio on the internet. So I'm a person who listens a lot. The idea behind podcasting, which is nice, is that you can listen while still doing other things. So, if you are doing video for learning, right, you have to focus on the video to see what's happening. You can listen and hear. And if you are reading something, obviously you need to have mental attentiveness to what you're reading to understand it. But for podcasting, you can listen to a conversation, or you can listen to someone telling you some information while doing something else. So for me, for driving, podcasting is wonderful. While I'm doing chores, or if I'm exercising, I can learn while still doing something else, which is helpful to being effective with time. One person who I think does a fantastic job of teaching how to share content, your expertise online, his name is James Martel, has taught many people over a decade now with podcasting, but also with other ways of building websites, and also gets to the point of commercial commerce, how to make money sharing your expertise, regardless of what your expertise is. His thinking is the technology piece, him not being a technologist, but the technology piece is actually easy to get set up, to figure out, with the right help. But the place where you really want to focus is making sure you have great content, which comes from your expertise. Another person on the lines of commerce is a gentleman named John Lee Dumas, who runs a podcasting company called EO Fire, Entrepreneur on Fire, and he actually shares his company's income, his profit, and his expenses per month, and he does a report, and he talks about all the details and shares the information, and you can show that sharing your expertise can really be helpful. Sharing your expertise can really be profitable, and he actually walks people through of how to do that. So now some things that I like in the business world, some podcasts that I listen to often are HBR IdeaCast at Harvard Business Review, gives a great view of many different topics that are relevant in today's world. I like Manager Tools a lot. Talks about the basics of being a good, effective manager in a corporate type environment, and breaks down to really granular detail specific things such as feedback, coaching, one-on-ones, direct report, and delegation. I use Planet Money all the time. It's an interesting NPR podcast which talks about how economics affects our daily lives. And then I also like Nightly Business Report, which is just a daily show during the week about what's going on with the markets, the economic cycles, individual companies. It's focused on stocks, but it really helps give a good vantage of what's going on in the economy. I want to go on here a little bit about social media. Social media has really grown over the last decade, and has kind of really changed a lot of the way that we communicate, and especially now with our devices and the ability to take video and pictures and share information. It can be very difficult to um, stay up with social media and understand social media. So the idea around social media is, consuming information that's relevant to you and interesting to you, but also being able to share information that would help the people that you want to get information to. Um, it can be cumbersome, it can take a lot of time, and the return may not be that great. So some ideas around social media actually is to be able to set it up in a way that doesn't take too much time, energy, and effort, and also set it up in a way that's automatic and interesting, for others. So a service that I really like and used in certain projects in the past is Hootsuite, where you can actually um, schedule what is going to go out onto your many different social media platforms. And obviously there are a ton of different social platforms, right? And they all act and are different, have different expectancies around them. But with Hootsuite, if you set up what they call a content calendar, um, meaning a calendar of when you want to send out what information, um, and then what platform, you can actually set it up in a way that um, makes it easy on you. So I'll give you a quick example here. Let's say if you were using something like Twitter. Twitter has what they call the stream, meaning there's 140 characters, a short burst of messages that go out rather often. And the idea of Twitter is you don't read everything on Twitter. You just read what is popping up on your screen at the time. And if you miss it, not a big deal. It's like it's like water in a stream. If it goes by, no big deal. There's more water to come. So you could set up to tweet through Hootsuite 3 times a day, every day if you like. If you think of those messages ahead of time, and Hootsuite, if you put it in Hootsuite, it'll send it out the times that you want it to send out. So that way you can stay current on the stream. Facebook is used a little bit more as for personal, which now is changing a little bit. They're showing their advertising is really starting to be effective, especially for the business world, and especially on the small business side. But you can integrate that into Hootsuite. You can use Hootsuite for Google Plus, which is Google's version of social media, or LinkedIn, which is typically found to be more professional type of conversations, or folks in a job search. Other social media type of products that I like that make using social media easier. I actually use the service here on the upper left-hand side called Rebel Mouse, which actually what it does is when I put information out on social media, it'll integrate it and it will put it back into my website, meaning everything I end up posting on social media, there's a live feed on my website that integrates through Rebel Mouse. So if I send out a tweet on an article that I read that I really liked, instead of me also remembering to put it on the website, it'll put that tweet, and if I attach a picture to it, it'll put it on my website for me. So I don't have to go back and remember to do that. Now what I really like about this is I can now use social media to share what I'm learning in real time. And what's even better is it starts creating a reservoir or a library or storage area for me of all the different types of information I've consumed, especially on my expertise of organizations, teams, and individual business executives or professionals. So that way, when I'm thinking about something or telling something about something, I don't have to figure out where I found it, who said what. I can actually, if I've shared it, I can now go back to one central place and say, oh yeah, this was the resource I wanted to share, or this is something I wanted to look in deeper. Another site Similar to Rebel Mouse is HubSpot, which some organizations use to manage their inbound marketing. It ties it a little bit closer to customer relations management. And another site that I found is really fascinating is Banjo. What Banjo does, it's an aggregator of information, and it takes what people are saying on social media and aggregates it to tell you the news, basically. So if there's something going on, and many people are tweeting about it or putting it about on Facebook at a certain time, Banjo has algorithms set up that says, oh, something's happening in this part of the world, and there's some story going on some idea, and it'll aggregate that and put it out there. So you can so I use Banjo to actually see what's really going on in the world without the typical news cycle, knowing that large networks, understand the news cycle and use and curate stories, for my attention. Banjo actually is curated by popularity and importance of frequency of what people are actually putting on. So I use it sometimes to see what's going on in the world that I don't see on the typical news. This is called a vanity URL. So what I mean by vanity URL is that if someone goes to my website, my URL, my name, Alok Sawhney, it'll actually drive them to my LinkedIn page, meaning that it doesn't take them to just a website, it just takes them to my LinkedIn page, so that way if I meet somebody and they want to connect with me on LinkedIn, because that's one of my preferred ways of connecting. This is a great way. This is inexpensive to do. It only costs a few bucks a year, like $10 a year or so, and it's a great way if someone wants to remember your name. You're worried they'll lose your business card. It's a great way to send them to a certain place that you would want them to go just by remembering something about you. I want to talk a little bit about WordPress. The idea around blogs has, ever changed. So I want to talk about WordPress. The idea around blogs has changed considerably. Before weblog, meaning that you could post information online of just for writing purposes, and then you could add pictures, and now you can do many things about it. The idea that WordPress has become kind of the center point, the go-to software, which is actually free and used by many sites. But the idea that I wanted to share is it being the hub and spoke model, meaning that you can use a WordPress website to put your central expertise, one place you can put your expertise, and it can branch out to many different areas, meaning you could send it out to social media, you can send it to email, you can do other things with it as a newsletter. But there's just, the idea around WordPress now is that it can be a place of reference for you. It can be a place that you can share your expertise, and then you can also use it as a central platform to send information out to your community. I want to get into now some of the things that I have found that are unique services that I really like to use a lot, especially in my work. One is Google Images. So it's actually, if you just go to images.google.com, you can take an idea or thought or whatever is in your mind, and if you want a visual representation, you can type it in as a word and pictures will come up. If you want to use pictures that are royalty or copyright, that have an open copyright, meaning you can use them, Pexels is a great place where you can find images where they are free to use. The other service that I like a lot is called Tineye, which is actually a reverse image search. So if you have an image that you want to find where else it's located on the web for any reason, you can actually put it in here. So one of the ideas that people do is they will put their corporate or enterprise image and see where it is, what websites it's being used upon. So that way you can track who's using your images. Another really interesting software, which is free, and I've used it just to build this presentation, is called Workflowy. And it's the idea of using it, and it looks just like a basic Word document or your word processing document. But the beauty about this is it really makes it easy to set up bullet points and to make lists with subpoints. Super simple. And just to kind of keep your thoughts in order as you're putting something together. It seems very simple and something you would be simple to do in word processing, but I've always struggled with figuring out how to get the bullet points aligned and what goes under what, and this easy online service, free, allows you to do that very simply. I want to talk a little bit about financial information, about sharing financial information and tracking financial information, because it can be really tough if you're a small business owner or an independent person. I use this product Mint all the time. It's connected to my financial account, so it keeps track of my expenses and it organizes them for me, which then is actually very easy to pull into QuickBooks, which is an accounting software used by small businesses. And then also when doing your taxes, the information is easily pulled into your tax return. So I found this easy and quite inexpensive to use. I use a service called Expensify that to put together expense reports. I can track mileage on that, so that actually really helps for local travel. So I found that to be helpful, and you can use it, on multiple devices. I like the tool called Asana, which is supposed to be a project management tool, but I really like it to hold ideas, especially if it's on a topic matter that's important to me. I just put ideas in Asana and go back to it whenever I have time. But it's kind of like a virtual notebook that I use it for. It's got many other functionalities to it that I don't use. Another idea is also using what they call a client relations manager or a customer relations manager, of understanding your touch points with certain clients or customers. Insightly has been found to be very useful. I've started to use it, and a good way to keep your contacts all in one place. One of my favorite services, Upwork, formerly known as Elance, where you can hire freelancers to help, especially with projects that are either technical from a technology standpoint, writing, editing, those types of services. I found Upwork to be immensely useful and cost-effective. Google Alerts is a great way to keep apprised of information about a topic or service that you're interested in, and it will send it directly to your email. Newsel is a way to understand what people are doing publicly. So you can actually get email alerts about certain people that you're tracking or following, or thought leaders, or folks that you're interested in, and what they do in the public space. So it's a great way to keep in touch of what's going on and keep abreast. And then for people who are interested in publishing books, CreateSpace, which is owned by Amazon, is a great way for publishing hardcover and paperback books. So in the digital world of using Kindle, which is very popular to get information out, there's obviously a group of folks who prefer paper and being able to read printed books. CreateSpace makes it actually very cost efficient to print small volumes, like not having to send large printings of books if you just only want a few of a book that you may have authored. CreateSpace allows you to do that, as well as to publish electronically. So the star moment, something to always remember from this presentation, hopefully you got 2 or 3 things that you could take away, is you can build your own platform today to share your expertise effectively and efficiently. You don't need to be scared by technology. There's so many different options, but if you have a strategy of what you want to continue, what you want to focus on, you can do it effectively. The harder part is having that core expertise to share, which many people have in their own realm. Question. Thank you for your time. This is Dr. Sani from alaj.com.